Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Founders built a system of checks and balances to protect the American people from concentrated power. They understood that liberty survives only when power is divided, restrained, and accountable. A central part of that design is the Supreme Court. Its duty is to defend the rights and freedoms of every American, not to serve as a political tool for any party or administration. Alexander Hamilton made this clear in the Federalist 78. He wrote that the court must remain independent from the political branches so it can stand as a barrier against unconstitutional acts. The judiciary was designed to be the quiet guardian of liberty, insulated from the passions of the moment, and be the weakest branch. Opposition to court packing is not new and not partisan. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg warned that court packing was a, quote, bad idea, close quote, and that, quote, if anything would make the court look partisan, it would be that, close quote. Justice Stephen Breyer called court packing a structural alteration that would erode trust in the judiciary and reminded his own party, quote, what goes around comes around, close quote. Even President Biden, back in the day when he still believed in judicial independence, called FDR's court packing plan a bonehead idea and a terrible, terrible mistake that threatened the independence of the Supreme Court. Now that's something that President Biden said that I could really agree with. President Biden's own Supreme Court Commission refused to endorse court packing. The commission admitted that it was divided on expansion and warned that adding seats would undermine the court's legitimacy and damage democratic values. They concluded that the risk of court expansion were considerable, including the likelihood that it would erode, not restore, public trust. Court packing is a direct assault on that independence. It is an attack on the Constitution itself. It is an attempt to turn the Supreme Court into an extension of political power rather than a check on it. We must ask a simple question. How can the Supreme Court protect Americans from government overreach if the same government can pack the court whenever it dislikes a ruling? How can the court restrain unconstitutional power if it can be punished for doing its job? And history gives us a clear warning. When President Franklin Roosevelt tried to pack the court in 1937, Congress, including Democrats, rejected it outright. FDR even attacked the justices personally, claiming, quote, lowered mental or physical vigor, close quote, made them unable to understand modern problems. Congress responded with bipartisan outrage. Members introduced at least 10 constitutional amendments to fix the court at 9 members. The Democrat-controlled Senate Judiciary Committee called FDR's plan, quote, an invasion of judicial power that violates every sacred tradition of American democracy, close quote. And the Senate voted 70-20 to strip every court packing provision from the bill. Both parties understood then what we must understand now. Court packing is a direct threat to the Republic. Many of my colleagues across the aisle have pushed court packing schemes for years. It's not new. The ranking member, Raskin, ranking member Johnson, and others made it a central goal during the Biden-Harris era. Their objective has been the same from the start: intimidate the court, pressure the justices, clear the way for their agenda. And let's be honest, they had no problem with the court when it delivered rulings they liked. They celebrated Roe v. Wade for decades. But the moment the court issued rulings they disagreed with, they demanded the institution be blown up and rebuilt to guarantee political outcomes. Their goal is not ethics, it's not policy, it's power. One of their own members, former Representative Mondaire Jones, said the quiet part out loud, quote, nothing will be enough to protect our democracy short of sending this far-right majority on the court to its rightful place in the minority and into the dustbin of history by expanding the Supreme Court, close quote. That's not about legitimacy. That's about punishing the court for doing its job. After the Dobbs decision, Democrats held hearings designed to delegitimize the court and inflame their base. They claimed other rights, interracial marriage, same-sex marriage, contraception, were at risk, even though the Dobbs majority explicitly stated otherwise. They used the hearing to launch personal attacks on Justice Thomas for expressing views he has held for decades. Some even insinuated he omitted Loving versus Virginia because of his interracial marriage, a disgraceful and baseless smear. This is not about protecting rights. That was about intimidating the court and rallying the far left. And look at Virginia, one ruling they did not like, and Democrats immediately called for wiping out the entire state Supreme Court. That's not reform, that's retaliation. They're not defending an institution, they're pursuing raw power, and they're willing to tear down every guardrail the founders put in place to get it. We have watched Democrats on this committee launch personal attacks and smear campaigns against sitting justices. They have questioned their integrity, their families, their faith, their right to serve, their qualifications. They've done this not because of ethics, but because they want political outcomes. Their reckless rhetoric has consequences, very real consequences. A left-wing radical was arrested outside Justice Kavanaugh's home, armed and prepared to assassinate him. Law enforcement stopped him, but Democrats' dangerous words helped fuel that attempt. Their attacks created an environment where violence became thinkable. And we have seen the same pattern in the repeated attempts by radical leftists to assassinate President Trump not once, not twice, but at least 3 times. This is what happens when extremists put power above country, when they treat political opponents as enemies, when they tell their supporters that institutions must be destroyed if they stand in the way. This assault on the Supreme Court must stop. This assault on the Constitution must stop. Democrats' efforts to pack the court, impose political ethics codes, or force term or age limits on justices are all part of the same campaign. They want to weaken the judiciary. They want to silence constitutional limitations on their power. They want a court that obeys them, not the Constitution. This constitutional amendment proposed today will fix the number of justices at 9 members and will stop their court-packing scheme. It will protect the court's legitimacy. It will preserve the checks and balances that safeguard our freedoms, and it will ensure the right of all Americans that they remain secure, no matter who holds political power. The Supreme Court must remain independent. It must remain strong enough to do its job, and it must remain a guardian of liberty, not a casualty of partisan ambition. I yield back.